The weight of unspoken words can crush a heart, but sometimes they can also save one. This is a story about patience, sacrifice, and a love that refused to die. If you believe in second chances, stay until the end. And if this story touches your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories of love and resilience. He waited 10 years, 10 long, agonizing years, just to say 3 words, "I love you." Ethan Clarke was 22 when he first saw Lily Patterson. She was standing in the university library, her dark hair falling over her shoulder as she reached for a book on the top shelf. He watched her stretch on her toes, her determination evident even in that simple gesture. Without thinking, he walked over and pulled the book down for her. When she turned to thank him, their eyes met, and for Ethan, the world stopped. Her eyes were the color of warm honey, and her smile was soft, genuine. In that moment, he knew. He just knew. They became friends almost instantly. Ethan was studying engineering, Lily was in literature. They were different in so many ways, yet they fit together like puzzle pieces. They spent countless hours in that library, in coffee shops, walking through the park near campus. Ethan fell deeper with every conversation, every laugh they shared, every time she absent-mindedly touched his arm while telling a story. But there was a problem. Lily had a boyfriend. Marcus had been in her life since high school. He was charismatic, confident, the kind of guy who commanded attention when he walked into a room. Ethan could see that Lily cared for him, maybe even loved him. And so Ethan made a decision that would define the next decade of his life. He would wait. He would be her friend, her confidant, her safe place. And he would keep his feelings locked away, hidden behind a smile that never quite reached his eyes. The years passed, like chapters in a book. They graduated. Lily and Marcus got engaged. Ethan stood in the back of the church on their wedding day, watching the woman he loved promise forever to someone else. His hands were clenched so tight his knuckles turned white. When everyone else was cheering, he was dying inside. But he smiled. He congratulated them. And he stayed in her life because the thought of losing her completely was worse than the pain of loving her from afar. Ethan threw himself into his career. He became a successful engineer, designing bridges and buildings that would stand for generations. But no matter how many structures he created, he couldn't build a bridge to the life he wanted. Lily was always there, in the background of his thoughts, in his dreams, in the quiet moments when he allowed himself to feel the weight of what could never be. They remained close friends. She would call him when she was happy, when she was sad, when she needed advice. And every time her name appeared on his phone, his heart would leap and break simultaneously. 5 years into her marriage, the cracks began to show. Lily started showing up at Ethan's apartment more often, sometimes with red eyes, other times with a distant look that made him ache for her. Marcus had changed. The charm had turned to arrogance. The confidence had become control. He criticized her writing, called her dreams foolish, made her feel small, but Lily stayed. She had made a commitment, she said. She believed in working through difficulties. Ethan wanted to scream at her to leave, to see her worth, to understand that love shouldn't make you feel worthless. But it wasn't his place, so he listened. He held her when she cried, and he kept his truth buried deeper than ever. The 8th year was the hardest. Lily stopped smiling. The light in her honey-colored eyes dimmed. She had given up her writing entirely, working a corporate job that paid well but killed her spirit. Marcus had convinced her that writing was a waste of time, that she needed to be practical. Ethan watched the woman he loved disappear little by little, replaced by a shadow who went through the motions of living without actually being alive. One night she came to his apartment at 2 a.m, shaking and crying so hard she could barely breathe. Marcus had thrown her manuscript, the one she'd been secretly writing for 2 years, into the fireplace. He called it garbage. He called her pathetic. Ethan held her that night, his own tears mixing with hers, and for the first time in 8 years he almost broke. The words were right there, pressing against his lips like a dam about to burst. "I love you. I've always loved you. "Leave him. Choose yourself. Choose us." But then she fell asleep against his chest, exhausted from crying, and he realized that his confession would only complicate her pain. This wasn't about him, it was about her finding her own strength, her own voice. So he stayed silent once again. Year 9 brought a small miracle. Lily started therapy. She began to see the patterns, the manipulation, the slow erosion of her identity. She started writing again, in secret, in the early morning hours before work. She joined a writer's group, and slowly, painfully, she began to remember who she was before Marcus made her forget. Ethan watched her transformation with pride and hope warring in his chest. He encouraged every step she took toward herself, even though he knew what it might mean. She was finding her courage, and courage, he knew, often led to change. The end of her marriage came quietly, without the dramatic explosion Ethan had imagined. Lily simply woke up one day, looked at her life, and decided she deserved better. She filed for divorce. Marcus tried everything: guilt, anger, promises to change. But Lily had finally found her strength. The divorce took 6 months. During that time, Ethan was her rock, just as he'd always been. But he still didn't tell her. She was healing, rebuilding, learning to stand on her own. The last thing she needed was the pressure of his feelings. 10 years after that day in the library, Lily called him. Her voice was different, lighter, freer. She asked if he wanted to meet at their old coffee shop, the one near campus where they used to spend hours, talking about everything and nothing. Ethan's heart hammered as he walked there. Something felt different. When he arrived, she was already seated by the window, the autumn sunlight turning her hair golden. She had a manuscript in front of her. Her eyes were bright, alive. She looked like the girl he'd fallen in love with a decade ago, but stronger, wiser. She told him she'd sold her novel. Her dream, the one Marcus had tried to burn, was coming true. Ethan felt tears prick his eyes as he congratulated her, his pride overwhelming. Then she reached across the table and took his hand. Her touch sent electricity through him, just as it always had. She told him she'd been thinking a lot lately, about her journey, about who had been there through everything, about the one person who had never asked her to be anything other than herself, about the friend who had seen her at her worst and loved her anyway. And then she stopped, her eyes searching his face. She said she knew. She'd always known. About his feelings, about the love he'd carried silently for 10 years. She said she'd seen it in the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching, in the way he'd been there for every tear and every triumph, in the way he'd never given up on her even when she'd given up on herself. Ethan's breath caught. For 10 years he'd hidden his heart, and apparently he'd failed spectacularly. He tried to speak, to finally say the words, but she pressed her finger gently to his lips. She told him she understood why he'd waited. She said she'd needed that time to find herself, to heal, to become someone who could stand on her own, before standing with someone else. She thanked him for his patience, for letting her journey be hers. And then, with tears streaming down her face and a smile that reached her eyes for the first time in years, she told him she was ready now. Ready to hear what he'd been holding back. Ready to explore what they could be if he still wanted to. Ethan felt 10 years of longing, pain, hope, and love well up inside him. His voice shook as he finally let the words free. "I love you, Lily. I've loved you since the moment I saw you reach for that book. I've loved you through every high and low, through your marriage and your divorce, through your darkest days and your brightest moments. I've loved you when you were with someone else, and I'll love you if you choose to be alone. I love you, and I've been waiting 10 years to tell you that." She was crying and laughing at the same time. She whispered that she loved him too, that somewhere along the way her best friend had become so much more, and she'd been too lost to see it. She said she needed time to do this right, to build something healthy and real. Ethan nodded, tears on his own cheeks now. He'd waited 10 years. He could wait a little longer to do it right. They took it slow. Coffee dates turned into dinner dates. Dinner dates turned into long walks where they talked about their future with the same ease they'd once talked about classes and dreams. 6 months later, Lily moved into Ethan's apartment, A year after that, he proposed in the library where they'd first met, right by the same bookshelf. She said yes before he finished asking the question. On their wedding day, as Ethan looked at Lily walking down the aisle toward him, he thought about that young man who'd waited in silence for so long. He thought about all the moments he'd almost given up, almost walked away to save himself the pain. He was grateful he'd stayed, because some loves are worth waiting for. Some people are worth the patience, the pain, the 10 long years of unspoken words. As they exchanged vows, Ethan realized something profound. His waiting hadn't been passive. It had been an active choice to support her growth, to honor her journey, to love her enough to let her find herself. And that kind of love, the kind that puts someone else's well-being above your own desires, that's the kind that lasts forever. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that true love is patient, that healing takes time, and that sometimes the best things in life are worth waiting for. Because at the end of the day, love isn't just about saying the words. It's about showing up again and again until the moment is finally right.